Hi everyone. I'm going to give a quick presentation on soil solarization, which is basically the use of clear plastic to sterilize the top few inches of soil. So why would you do this? Really to control soil-borne diseases, insects, and weeds. As we know, soil is teeming with life. Most of that life is beneficial, but some of these organisms can cause plant disease, and then of course weeds and weed seeds are not great things to have in your garden. So what does it do? Basically uses solar energy to kill soil pests and pathogens. The plastic creates a greenhouse effect and lets soil temperatures get up to 180 degrees in the top few inches of the soil. And this is high enough to kill bacteria, fungi, nematodes, mites, insects, weeds, and even weed seeds. So you want to do this during the hottest part of the year, and it's most effective in areas with full sunlight because it's that solar energy that's causing the heat and killing the organisms. So the first step is to remove any plant matter and clean up the garden bed. Add any soil amendments you would be adding if you needed to. And then you can optionally till the soil a few inches deep to allow deeper penetration of the heat, although this isn't totally necessary. Next, you would rake the area and make sure the soil is kind of highest in the center of the bed, and this will prevent rainwater from collecting in the middle of that plastic, which would prevent heat from developing. It would actually cool off the soil, which we don't want. Finally, you'd water the soil to at least a foot deep, or you can apply the plastic after a rain. Moisture helps conduct the heat and actually create steam underneath the plastic, but you don't want it to be too muddy, or that mud might get the plastic dirty, which wouldn't allow penetration of light, which is the reason we use clear plastic to begin with. So after your soil is all ready and prepared, you want to dig a trench a few inches deep around the entire bed, as you see here. Next, you want to tightly cover the soil with clear plastic that's at least 1.5 millimeters thick. If you use plastic that's too thin, it'll break into a billion pieces in the heat, and then you'll have plastic contaminated soil, which is nothing anyone wants to deal with. So use thick plastic. Press the plastic after you've laid it out, press it into the trenches, and then seal the edges by filling the trenches with soil. And then you want to leave this in place for about 4 to 6 weeks to allow those temperatures to stay high enough for long enough to kill the pests and disease-causing organisms. So a few troubleshooting things you might run into: if you tear the plastic or get holes in the plastic, you actually do need to seal those back up to keep the greenhouse effect in place. Duct tape works great. If you notice weeds still growing under there, you might first check and make sure the edges are fully sealed. And then also, again, you want to make sure that plastic is clear, because if it's not enough of that solar energy will get in through the plastic to create that greenhouse effect. If you use something like black plastic, it will smother the weeds, but the temperature in the soil won't get high enough to kill the disease-causing organisms. Some benefits of using this method are that you get to manage soil pests without chemicals. The effects usually last for many months or even longer, and it can be used on raised beds or flat beds in a variety of situations. Some drawbacks are that these high temperatures also kill beneficial organisms, but if you apply a layer of compost afterwards, these beneficial organisms return quite rapidly to the soil. It also takes many weeks. It's mostly hands-off time, but it will be 4 to 6 weeks of not being able to grow anything in your garden. Another drawback is that you'll have a bunch of plastic you need to dispose of at the end. Maybe you can save it and use it again next year if it was thick enough and still in good enough shape. And then finally, it's less effective with sandy soil, mostly because that soil doesn't hold moisture as well, and so doesn't get hot enough. And finally, here are my references. If you desire to read more, there's some great information online, and of course through the LSU Ag Center website is where I found most of these resources.